Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rainbow Talks. I am your host, Harry Hawkins. Great to see you again. Hope you're doing well. This is a very special edition of Rainbow Talks. This is our lavender graduation edition. As many of you know, right now we're all sheltering in place at home, and we are not able to have Lavender Grad in person. So, taking a lemon and making lemonade, I thought, what better thing to do than to have our keynote speaker from Lavender Graduation, Stephen Fields, here to join us as our special guest here in episode 2. So let's just dive right in. Stephen Lulabelle Fields is the project coordinator of Project STOP, Support, Treatment, and Ongoing Prevention, a SAMHSA-funded project under Writers, Planners, Trainers, Inc., WPT, for Black same-gender-loving men and transgender women. Mr. Fields was awarded a Master of Education degree with an emphasis in clinical mental health counseling by the University of Missouri St. Louis in December of 2012. He is a designated National Board Certified Counselor as of 2014, and happy to report, as of this past month, he is now a certified family therapist. His professional experience includes providing individual and group psychotherapy, administering mental health assessments, coordinating crisis intervention services, facilitating psychoeducational and psycho-support groups, and implementing behavioral interventions and overseeing sexual health and wellness programming for young gay and bisexual men of color. And he is also our fabulous, fabulous keynote speaker for Lavender Grad this year, joining us for episode 2 of Rainbow Talks. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad to have. So, first thing I would want to ask is, with all this just tumult going on right now, how are you holding up?
I'm taking it day by day. I'm trying to make the most of the time because there's just so much time and I got to stay in the house. So I've been doing a lot of continuing education.
Yeah. And so as a mental health provider, what are you doing in terms of self-care, and do you have recommendations for people like you said who are shut in right now? It's really hard on folks.
Following the rules, I guess, every now and again. I would say take a walk outside. Just get a break from being in the inside. I'm an extrovert, so it's killing me to be isolated. There are times when it's refreshing and rejuvenating, but then I want to get outside or I want to talk to somebody. But it's I think that it's well needed and much needed rather. So get a good book. Or a few good books. Let's see. Journal.
Yeah.
Watch Vampire Diaries. I've been watching
it. Or True Blood.
Yeah, or True Blood.
Yeah, there you go.
I just find ways to relax, which is really hard for me. So this is really teaching me to take time out for myself.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I guess the question I would ask, being an extrovert, have you been hopping on a bunch of virtual happy hours with friends or doing things like that?
Yes, we've done those, and there have been a couple of group meetings that we've been on Zoom with, and or no, not Zoom, it was Facebook. It was Facebook video. Yeah. And that keeps me kind of plugged in, so I'm appreciative. I'm glad for that. I'm glad for the innovators out there because I prefer face to face, and so it's really hard to do through video. But it's okay. It's a way to stay obedient, and then also to be a little rebellious. So
yeah. And safe, I mean, we're not, possibility of contracting COVID-19 is the other piece of it. But no, I mean, that's good. That's good that you're adapting. It's very different. Like, I was thinking about that when I first reached out to you, and like thinking of, okay, this was going to be a speech to all of our graduates, to all of us in the Century Rooms there at UMSL, and now it's a conversation. It's a very different context than
Yeah.
what it originally was. I jokingly say, as an introvert, I feel like my entire life has been prepared for this moment. So I've been enjoying the being at home and the rejuvenation, but I am also with you. I think there is a period where I kind of do want to see people in person a little bit. I do miss that human interaction. But as an introvert, I'm like, in little bits. Not. I don't want to jump fully back into it. But it's tough. It's tough, and it's good to hear that you're hanging in there. You found some like self-care, and I think some of the things that you suggested are absolutely really good for folks. So I want to jump in at the beginning here and just ask, like, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, where were you born? Where were you raised?
Okay. I was born and raised I was born in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, and I was raised in the New Madrid County, Dunklin County area. So, and I have to say area because we lived so I was born in Poplar Bluff, but we were raised in a really, really small town called Harville, outside of Bluff. And that's where my family is from. And we eventually moved to Malden, which is in Dunklin County, but we went to school in New Madrid County. So I was all over the place. So yeah, that's where I'm from, born and raised in the Boot Heel.
In the Boot Heel, I know. When you were saying it, I was making a point of reference when I drive home to Mississippi and I go down Interstate 55. I was like, okay, I think, yep, I know where that is now.
Yeah, right off the highway, and the high school is right off the highway. So
yeah. So what would you say are some of the differences? We hear about this a lot. Like, we get students at UMSL from all over the state of Missouri and the region, and we have a lot of students that come from the rural region. So what was it like growing up there?
it was a mixture. It was a mixture. On the positive side, I enjoyed the slowness. One thing that brings me comfort is hearing a train on the railroad tracks, because both in Harville and which we say down home. So down home, we were really close to the railroad, and at home we were close to the railroad too. So it brings me peace when I hear a train. And things were very slow. But what we had a lot of was family, and a lot of time to spend in family doing anything, shelling peas, making cornbread. The country living was great for me in terms of a safe place.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Missouri is conservative, period. And when we go into, going into a rural part of Missouri, it's even more conservative. In terms of identity work, it was a real challenge to find a sense of identity. Some people would be like, "Oh my God, you're so confident and so out."
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that. I think that it is bravery, but it came from a different place. It was was more so that everything else was uncomfortable for me. And so I just had to be myself, and I didn't really have a choice. I don't think. And so it was really hard. It was tough. I was a gifted student, so I was really intelligent and smart. Yet I was also bullied, and so those things were. And then I was also very sheltered to a certain degree. My grandparents were evangelist and pastor. So, and my family is also very religious too. So, it was not easy. It wasn't easy, to say the least. But I am grateful for. I'm grateful for the way that I started out. I'm grateful for it for the most part.
Yeah, you're resilient.
Coming into the city, I had to learn different things. Like, my friends, I would think about my friends and say, oh, okay, well, I'll just drive over there. It's just 20 minutes, And instead of calling, they was like, well, wait a minute, you should be calling before you come all the way over here. And I'm like, no, it's no big deal. We do it all the time in the boot hill,
Yeah.
So, there were things that I had to learn, and I like the convenience of the city. And St. Louis is more of from my understanding, it's more of a smaller city. So, it's nice. It's nice. And, so I moved here in order to pursue my master's degree. And in some ways I've been here ever since. But some of my family, there was a migration. After everybody graduated, they moved up north. And so one of my favorite aunts, Aunt Lena, she lives here. And so it was just, St. Louis was like second home for me. So I just came here and it just kind of all worked together.
Yeah. People don't understand. I think people who maybe grow up in a city or even a suburb may not know the struggle of, hey, I'm going to the store. Well, that's a 45-minute drive one way. I come from a rural state too, so I know exactly what you're talking about, of how people just go to other people's houses and things. It brought back memories. I was like, yeah, that does not fly in the city. Don't show up at my house. But back home, someone will pull up in the driveway and you kind of go to the window. Oh, so-and-so's here. Yeah, it is it's those little cultural differences that I think are interesting and fun to recollect on. So you talked about it a little bit about your journey to higher education. What led you to go into clinical mental health counseling?
At the time, I think it was called community counseling.
Yeah, it used to be. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it changed before I graduated. So, let me see. I think at first, when I was thinking about what do you want to be when you grow up, I think I initially wanted to be a doctor or something, but then I was like, well, no, I don't really like blood at that time. And then I said, well, maybe I'll be a lawyer. No, I don't really like lying. At least that's the way that I saw law. And so, I did notice that people talked, and they talked to me about a lot of different things. And in college, let me see, somehow I learned about being a therapist, and I wanted to be a dance therapist, but then dance had turned into something different in college than what it was for me, it had always been an expressive medium for me. But then once I got to college, it seemed to be more about competition. And I was not, in the Blue Hill, we didn't have dance classes. Yeah. So I had to learn everything in college, like, a plie or tendu, all of that stuff. So I felt very remedial. And and I also had a therapist. So there was a couple of things that were going on at the same time. I had a therapist that was really, really good. And let's see. And I think that this is important, the way that I was introduced to psychotherapy and counseling was, let's see. So being raised by my grandparents, my grandmother was like my mother and my great-grandmother was like my grandmother. So my senior year of high school, my great-grandmother passed, and I was severely depressed. I want to say that I missed over 30 days of school. I was a straight A student until that year. And a few months before then, I had come out. So January 2004 was the funeral of one of my favorite cousins. And it was on my birthday. Her funeral was on my birthday. And about 4 months later is when I came out. And then a couple of months later, senior year started and Mama died. That's what we called her. And let's see. Then we graduated 2005 and my grandfather died in June, or no, he died in July. He died in July. And then 3 weeks later, my grandmother's baby brother passed.
Wow. And what happened in that year?
Oh, yeah. And the night of his funeral, my uncle, who is the son of my grandmother and my grandfather, he got into a really bad car accident and had to be shipped to St. Louis, and he almost died. And that was the weekend before I started college. So there were a lot of things going on, a lot of transitions. It was just packed with a lot of different things. And one of my advisors suggested that I go and talk to a counselor. And so I did. And she was amazing. She was great. She helped me to stay in my body to some degree. And so, I felt indebted to the process. And I took a human sexuality class by one of my favorite professors. His name, Dr. Larry Clark, I think. And it was the absolute best class that I had ever taken and probably the best score that I have ever had in college. And before then, my grandmother was, when I was a kid, she was a prenatal care expert. And so she would have these presentations of STDs and STIs and stuff, and premarital sex and all of that in the church. And so there was this, of course, it was very shame-driven, fear-based, but I loved it. I loved it. And so sexual health, sexuality, human sexuality was something that in some ways was kind of like in my bloodline. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And so I took the human sexuality class and I fell in love with intimacy. We studied that particular part about relationships, and that's what drew me into counseling. And I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to teach people how to be intimate with each other, and not even just to be intimate, but also because first of all, we got to develop it, and then we have to maintain it, And so that's what I was interested in. And my counselor at the time, her name is Linda Vogelsang, and she said, you want to go to a KCREP accredited institution. And so we researched and we found St. Louis, and we found UMSL. And I remember reading about Dr. Cashbick West, and she was, or is, she's an open lesbian, and she's a professor, and so in counseling. And I was like, I need to meet her. And so I met her, and I applied, and I got in, which I was really shocked that I did. So that's what brought me to UMSL.
Okay. All right.
Long, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it was a good story. It was, a lot of people, I don't think at times we're a society that's always moving forward. And I don't think we take enough time to stop and think, how did I get here? Like, what journey did I go on? And to think back on that journey, and to look at it, and to have other people hear about the journey, and just that resiliency that you have, and you still are. You're a very resilient person. I think it was wonderful to hear. So a question I have, what advice would you give students who are currently in the program? And just full disclosure, our producer, Kevin, who's hiding, he is currently a student in the counseling program. So what advice would you give those students?
Believe. Okay, so one, you are worthy. You are worthy to be in the program because you're in it. That was huge for me. I did not think that I was worthy. I mean, at the time, Dr. Pope was, he was the chair of the program, and I had learned that, this is just an example, I had learned that he was a past president of the American Counseling Association. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
This is my advisor, there's no way. What did I do in order to earn this space? To be around, and Dr. Catoni is amazing, and I love him. Just to be in class with these giants was huge for me. I mean, it was like going to the Grammys, like, oh my God, I'm sitting here. He's written a book. They've written, it was, I got lost in being a fan, and not really recognizing that these people saw potential in me as a therapist, as a counselor. And so I would say a main thing is to really believe that you're worthy. And I think that it's hard to do that in a society that says that the way that you present, the way that I present, the way who I am and how I identify is less than. And so it's easy for people like me to think that and believe that. And so I went into my program believing that I was less than and that I didn't deserve it. And it made it really hard for me to stay present. So the next thing is to be present, and to challenge yourself to be present. And that may look like, and I'm a huge proponent of personal therapy, because it was very needed and necessary for me, and still is, because I still go. And so just stay present. Allow yourself to be creative, to take your personality, your identities, and build from there, and take your career and be that, is what I would say too. And also to there were lots of experiences that I had at the beginning. So I started working in sexual health 2011. So I was a year into the program, and at first, it was really hard for me to accept that I was a counselor in this role, because the role was not therapist. It didn't say therapist or counselor. So I was like, I don't even know if this shit is worth it. Like, I'm not using my skills. I'm not being a counselor, is what I was telling myself. But there, I had a friend, and she would always tell me, you're probably in the best place that you could be in, because you'll never be not a counselor. You're always a counselor. And you're using your skills. And it didn't occur to me until later that was true. And so now, my focus is I don't know if I remembered. I'm remembering dreaming now. And human sexuality class, and all of those things have come back to me, because I started watching Sex Ed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On Netflix.
Yeah.
Wonderful show, wonderful. And I realized, like, what, that is who I wanted to be. So there's a character on there who is a relationship and sex therapist. I think she says it different. Sex and relationship therapist. I think that's how she says it. And it reignited something for me. And then so I look back at the different positions that I've had that were in sexual health, and it makes sense now. Like, I've been doing this the whole time. So I said all of that to say that, let me see how to put this in words, how to articulate it. Not only are you worthy, but your experience is valid. I discounted my experience a lot, as a student, as a person, as a clinician, and I want people that come behind me and through my legacy or whatever to really own their experiences. And you go to a career counselor and learn how to build on your experience, because that's all we have. You know, so that's kind of what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that's very important because I was thinking about that in preparation for us talking today and thinking to myself like as an LGBTQ man, person of color who was a counselor as well, what really, because anytime I think of questions that I'm going to ask somebody, I would always say, well, I'd ask myself the same question.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about that myself. I was like, what really drew me or like why? And I think you nailed it is your lived experiences and your identities and for the people coming behind you, because we have a legacy of being told that our lived experiences and identities as LGBTQ people and then even add on person of color is not important. It's
Yeah.
just not valued. And to blaze a trail or to walk in the footsteps of those that have come before us and keep those stories alive, I think is very, very important. And I think you touched on that very well. I was like, yep, that's exactly it. So in your work that you do now, Stephen, like what drew you to working with African American men who have sex with men population, or sometimes you'll hear people say MSM. Like what
Mm-hmm.
drew you to
Identity.
that?
um,
Yeah.
I my best friends and I, we've been. This is 2020, so this is our 14th year, and before I went to college, or no, I was actually in college. We would sit around and talk about relationships and things that have gone sour or things that we loved, and there really wasn't. Well, this was around the time Noah's Ark was out,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah. So I just, and then I went to Black Pride. We went
Okay.
to Black Pride in Memphis, Tennessee,
Okay.
and there was this. There was just this difference about how some of the groups were, and there was a specific program actually that we attended, and it was all about us, and I met people and connected with people who cared and who were educated, and they cared about me, and had just met me, and so I used to go to Memphis all the time, and there was just this family sense that I took from them, and or at least that they raised me in. And so I said, I this is what I want to do. And if I'm going to be a counselor or a therapist, or counselor and therapist, I want to give to my community. I Because we need it. There were very few people that I saw that looked like me or who identified like me in my field. And so I figured, why not? That's something that I could specialize in. And so I did, and I also was blessed with the opportunities to be in positions that allowed me to focus. And though at the time I didn't really see the utility of it, it really worked out in my favor.
Yeah. And what do you believe are some of the mental health risks for this particular population, African American MSM population?
What I have seen is depression. And you know what? To be honest, it's almost like every other population. I would say the community at large, it's pretty much the same, but then we also have substance abuse. I think, and though there isn't any research, I haven't read it just yet. Relationship problems, interpersonal, like, how do we maintain, how do we develop relationships in terms of friendships? Dating is hard. Most of my career has been in HIV related services. And so I think that there's a grief component, but again, most of what I have experienced is representative of the general population. There's a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, maybe some bipolarity. I don't even think I said that right. Bipolarness. I think that we have a lot of undiagnosed mental health issues, and even you know what, there might be a lot of diagnosed areas, but then I will say untreated, because there's a difference between being diagnosed and being treated. I think that overall there is just a lot of unaddressed psychological, I don't want to say issues. I'll say it this way. There is a lot of unaddressed psychology in our community. I'll say that.
Do you think, Stephen, that ties in directly with like the lack of access to resources and the lack of allocation of those resources, especially in health, that keeping those disparities alive?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then and not really knowing how to get those resources, even if they are available, what do you do to, it's almost like we have to teach, or what I'm learning is that I have to teach and maybe it's not a have to, I choose to teach my clients how to engage and how to participate, because sometimes you can just go. Yes, you're being obedient by coming to the appointment, but then what do you do during the appointment? So teaching people how to be clients is also important, and I don't think that we have had that experience. So.
And it's interesting in the conversation. I was thinking back myself in a former life as a lobbyist and really doing a lot of work with HIV and then African American MSM population back in Mississippi. And the thing I used to say, it really brought it back to, I was like, man, I remember that, was, it's totally relevant right now. And what we're seeing with COVID-19 and the response is that illnesses, diseases, mental health issues, they do not discriminate. But when it comes down to the allocation of resources and the access to those resources, there is total discrimination there. And you're seeing that with COVID-19 right now. The African American community is decimated, and the response and the allocation of the resources and the testing are not going to those communities. And I think, having this conversation about mental health, it all ties in. It really goes back to that nasty root, as I call it. The resources that they're not allocated there, and it's frustrating. So, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Stephen.
Oh no, to say the least, it is frustrating. And honestly, I think that we can always trace a problem to a mental health, try to weave it in some way. It's mental health, so the way that we do things, the way that we present, the way that we show up, has a lot to do. No, I'm not even going to say has a lot to do. That's mental health that we're talking about. So I think every condition, we can trace it back to mental health in some way. And I don't mean by saying that the etiology is mental health, but there probably is a mental health effect, you know.
So switching gears a little bit, and as we said at the onset of this episode, was that, of course, this is the Lavender Graduation Edition, and we had you on as our keynote speaker for Lavender Graduation. You even have your lavender tie on, so yes, it looks fabulous. But what advice do you have to offer graduating LGBTQ students, and then what do you believe are the most important tools for those graduates while they transition from a university to a workplace?
Relationships with your internship supervisor, your advisor. That's what I would say, and I'm gonna turn it back on me. The relationships that I built during the program have been, let's see, what's the best word? Saving grace for me. And in addition, also, I want to say, and I said this earlier about going to the career counselor, as at the time that I was there, career counseling was free.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Is it still free?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I think that we can still visit the career counselor after we've graduated. I think that I have done that, but sitting with someone who does this for a living, and when I say this, I mean career counseling.
Yeah.
Who was incredible for me, because you can go online, or I could go online and find a template for a resume, find a template for a cover letter. But then going to the career counselor, I learned that, you might want to stay away from formats because they use tables and all of this, and you want something that's going to, that you can move around easily. So she taught me how to make a resume from scratch, really, and allow it to be a livable document, because it's that's very important. So especially when I was applying for multiple jobs, and I was taught that it would be more beneficial for me to adapt my resume to each job that I applied to, which takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, but it's worth it. And because of that, the little small thing, well, it really wasn't small, but the advising to stay away from the template and put the time in to make this resume something that really reflects me, was really, really helpful. So I would definitely say go to the career counselor, make a few appointments, because she taught me how to make my resume, how to make the cover letter, and also how to present and how to learn the organization. I have my own little way of researching the company and making my cover letter reflect their values and their mission statement. So, find your way. And I think that career counseling can help with that process. And then again, as well, definitely relationships with professors and advisors. That's what helped me.
Yeah, and I would say any students that we may have at UMSL who are watching this video, first, thank you. But visit our career center when we're back up and running, and they still have services that are available right now, even in this time of shelter in place. Just go to the homepage, type in career services, it'll go right up. Or if you're a student watching from anywhere, your university has this available to you. And as Stephen said, most of the time, it's free to you. So definitely check out your career services and your career center. So in our last little bit of time left, Stephen, any general life advice you would give to our graduates? I know there's a lot to offer.
There is. Let's see. You are the best resource that you have. And let's see. Believe in yourself. I think I'm really repeating what I've already said, because I think that it stands on the shoulders of how you view yourself, and just believe and continue to believe and make everything count. And if you don't know how to make everything count, then connect with somebody who can teach you or can guide in that way. Because you count. And I have to say that over and over again, because there's so many times that I've discounted and not counted myself. And I want differently for y'all. Count yourself in and continue to count everybody who is against you, count them out. So love yourself. Be proud that you're an UMSL grad. It's definitely something to be proud of, especially if you're in the counseling program, because when I graduated, we were, I think, number 4 or number 5 in the country. So and get certifications. It's taken me a while to work on my license, but throughout I've managed to get certifications and connect with other organizations like American Counseling Association. I'm also a part of ASECT, and soon I will be certified. It's going to take a while, and it's going to take some money, but also invest in yourself that way too, because certifications are not cheap. But get them in the areas that you're interested in. Yeah. I think that's it.
So Stephen, I always do this at the very end. I ask a totally off-topic, random question.
Okay.
So, random question for today: favorite brand and type of potato chips?
Lay's. Wait a minute.
Oh.
Yes. Okay. Lay's kettle cooked.
Ooh.
Salt and vinegar.
Okay. All right. I was gonna say I am a Golden Flake dill pickle guy.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty good. You get those down south. They're very, very, very sour and very salty. But yeah, interesting. Stephen, thank you for being our guest today. Stephen Fields is the project coordinator of Project Stop. Stephen was also our Lavender grad commencement speaker. Stephen, once again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you all for checking out episode 2 of Rainbow Talks. I hope you're well. Stay safe and stay classy, folks, and we will see you for another episode of Rainbow Talks very soon. Have a nice day.